We started B'siyata D'Shmaya, Maseches Yoma. Like I mentioned previously, the most of the Masechta, the whole beginning of the Masechta, speaks about the Avodas Yoma Kippurim. Blatter and Blatter, already a few blot into the Masechta, speaking about the Avodas Yoma Kippurim. Rashi says, right in the beginning of the Masechta, the first Rashi, says Rashi, Shivas Yom Kodim Yom Kippurim, already, it's the preparations start already 7 days before Yom Kippur. Says Rashi, Shekol Avodas Yom Kippurim Eino Ksheira Elaboy. That means, all what we're going to be learning now, Bletter and Bletter about the Avodas Yom Kippurim, says Rashi, that any avodah of Yom Kippurim is only kosher boy with the Kohen Gadol. What's the Bekoyer? The Bekoyer for this din that avodas Yom Kippurim has to be with the Kohen Gadol dafka. On a regular day, the Kohen Gadol could come and could say he wants to do this avodah, that avodah, but a Kohen Hedyot could and does the avodas. And these payasas, these raffles, which Kohen gets to do what avodah. Yom Kippur, says Rashi that the Kohen Gadol has to do the avodas Yom Kippurim, it's kasha elaboy. That means you can't have any helpers. You can't have any helpers on Yom Kippur. What's the makar? What's the makar for this then? So it's interesting, Kediyaluf B'Hoiriyas Perek Basra. The Gemara, it's a Gemara in Hoiriyas, and the emphasis is that it's a Gemara by us also. Interesting, go to Gemara Hoiriyas. The Gemara Daf Lamed Bais, Amud Bais. We'll get there, Be'ez Hashem. The Gemara says, it's a Lashon HaGemara in a few places. V'tanan, kol avodas yom, it's, I think V'tanya, they switch it, kol avodas yom HaKippurim, einon ksheros elaboy. Pashat, if a Kohen Hedyot does the avodas yom HaKippurim, it's possible. Einon ksheros elaboy. Where's the Bekoyer for the Gemara? So the emphasis Rashi brings a pasuk. It's very interesting. Where does Rashi get this pasuk from? If you look in all the Gemaras that say this din, there's no pasuk. There's no pasuk. Rashi brings a pasuk. But before going into Rashi's pasuk, I would like to first go to the Chinuch. It's a little bit simpler. The Chinuch says it's pashut that the avodah has to be b'Kohen Gadol. Why? Because the whole entire parsha of the Avodas Yom Kippurim is speaking about Ba'aron, B'zois Yavei Aaron al HaKodesh. It's Aaron, constantly it says Aaron HaKohen. Aaron was the Kohen Gadol at the time. So it's Ma'akiv, the whole parsha is speaking about Kohen Gadol, has to be Kohen Gadol. Sheyasa Kohen Gadol Kol Ma'aseh Yom Kippurim. The Kohen Gadol has to do it. Zok Techinuch K'masha Kosted BeParsha B'zois Yavei Aaron al HaKodesh Kol HaParsha. The whole parsha, like others quote, you look in every few psukim, it says again, Aaron should be Maser the Dam, constantly Aaron HaKohen. And the emphasis that Rashi himself, Daf Hey Amud Bais, Rashi says, Tivra Maschol Ma Talmud Loimar. Hey Amud Aleph. That's how I couldn't find it. Hey Amud Aleph. So Rashi, Ma Talmud Loimar, Im L'lamet Sheti Avodah B'Kohen Gadol, V'aloi Kol HaParsha Ba'Aaron Nemra, B'zois Yavei Aaron, V'nosan Aaron, V'hikrav Aaron, V'o Aaron. Rashi goes through Aaron. It's about it's B'Kohen Gadol. So the emphasis of why Taka, first of all, like we asked before, where does Rashi get this pasuk? And the emphasis, another kasha would really be is, what is Rashi bringing? A yuchadig pasuk The whole parsha speaking about Aaron HaKohen. So to answer the first question, what's the Makoyer for Rashi this pasuk? It's a Teres Koyanim. The Teres Koyanim in Parshas Achrei, right here on this pasuk, Zok the Teres Koyanim, piece by piece. The Teres Koyanim says that it's referring that the Kohen HaGadol has to do the avodah. It's Aaron, and if it's not Aaron, Kohen Menayim l'Rabbis, Kohen HaMashuach. On this pasuk, what Rashi brings, v'chipar Rashi yimshach oisa ma talmud loy ma lafisha kol aparsha mura ba'aron Aaron HaKohen, the Kohen Gadol, in liela Aaron atzmoi. What's about Menayin l'Rabbis Kohen acher? But not stam any Kohen. The Medrash, the Teres Kohanim says talmud loy masha yimshach a Meshuach, which means a Kohen Gadol. What's if he's not Meshuach but he's meruba bebegadim? The Hainu also a Kohen Gadol. Al Kapanim, the Medrash, the Teres Kohanim says clearly from this pasuk that it needs to be either Aaron or a Kohen Gadol, not Aaron HaKohen. So it's clear, it's mafurish. Why does Rashi bring this pasuk? Avad Taka, the Makoyer of this pasuk, that it's saying that it needs to be a Kohen Gadol and it's Ma'akiv, is like Taka the Teres Kohanim. But why Dafka this pasuk? The Chafetz Chaim in his Pirish, right here on the Teres Kohanim, on these words, it's Moiridik, he says, Menayin l'Rabbis Kohen acher hamismane. This is the lashon of the Teres Kohanim. Talmud loy b'v'chipar HaKohen. Pirish. Menayim shetzrichen anu lahaskin loy Kohen acher shem yerabay psol. Mamish, the Mishnah that we're learning over here, you prepare the Kohen himself, Kohen Gadol, and you prepare a backup Kohen Gadol, because it's ma'akiv. The avodah has to be b'Kohen Gadol. If it's not b'Kohen Gadol, it's pasul. So could be that's why Rashi brings this pasuk pashtus, like we saw. Rashi says later, Versteht it's b'Kohen Gadol. The whole parish is b'Kohen Gadol, like the Chinuch says. Because he brings this pasuk, like what the Chafetz Chaim explains, that it's saying that it's machayiv even to bring a backup Kohen Gadol. Agav, I just want to say that it's not pasha to learn pshat like this in the Teres Kohanim. The Torah Tamima learns that it's not coming to say that you have to have a backup Kohen Gadol. The Torah Tamima explains this Teres Kohanim. He brings and he explains that it's coming to say minayin that a Kohen Gadol doesn't go dafka from a father to a son. Talmud loymar that whoever Klal Yisrael's memana the Kohen Gadol, he's the Kohen Gadol. Sure, that's a different way how you can understand it. But Akopanim Mikol HaNal, we spoke so far a very clear din. Rashi quoting Gemaris from a Teres Kohanim, what's mafurish in the parsha, that the avodas Yom Kippurim is ma'akiv dafka with the Kohen Gadol. He had a lot of work to do. Chlor. All these beleted that we're learning now was all on the Kohen Gadol to do, and if you didn't do it, was pasul. The shaila, however, is what's about avodas on Yom Kippur that are not Yom Kippur related? Meaning to say, every single day of the year, there was avodah in the Bais HaMikdash. As we mentioned, it could have been with any kohen. The Talmud in the morning, Talmud Bein Arbayim, Trumas Hadeshen, preparing the menorah, cleaning off the Mizbeach HaPnimi. It was Goyrolis. What happened on Yom Kippur? This din that Kol Avodas Yom Kippurim, is it only avodas that are connected to Yom Kippur? All the avodas that are neschadish for Yom Kippur, only that the Yom Kohen Gadol. It's not only, but the avodas Yom Kippurim, or every single avodah throughout Yom Kippur, whatever was done in the Beis HaMikdash was only through the Kohen Gadol. Clear? This is what we're going to speak about till the end of this year. Avodas Yom Kippurim, that's ma'akev b'Kohen Gadol, like we saw clearly in the Torah Kedosha, clearly be'aron with the Kohen Gadol. Is it only avodas Yom Kippurim, all the avodas that were related to Yom Kippur, or not only avodas Yom Kippurim, every single avodah throughout the night and day, anything that was done in the Bais HaMikdash and Yom Kippur needed to be done dafka with the Kohen Gadol. The answer to this is, it's a machlokes. It's a machlokes rishonim. The shita of the Baal Hamor right here on our Gemara, on our Mishnah, our Gemara Daf Bais. Now it's interesting, the Baal Hamor goes on the Rif. But if you take a look on the back, there's no Rif. The whole beginning of the Masechta, there's no Rif, because the Rif is a Sefer LaHalacha. And it's only halacha lamaisa that's negeiah lamaisa. We should be zoicha b'mheira b'yameinu that all this should be negeiah, but for right now that we're in Golus, it's not negeiah. So maybe the Rif, anything that's not negeiah now, the Rif didn't write his Pirush on. There's no Rif. But the Baal Hamor on our Gemara, even without a Rif, you turn to the page, there's Baal Hamor without Rif. The Baal Hamor says that avodas Yom Kippurim b'Kohen Gadol was everything. Any avodah that was done throughout Yom Kippur was dafka with the Kohen Gadol. At kedei kach, he says that the nusach, the avodah that we say, we spoke about it very briefly last week, by Musaf, Chazar Sashatz, these two Neschoyes, Nusach Ashkenaz, Nusach Svard, he says the piyutim, the avodah that we say, mentions Payosis, the Goyrolis, which Agav, it's only mentioned in Nusach Ashkenaz, more about it soon. But in the Nusach, it's very clearly, also, I'm reading in the Nusach Ashkenaz, most Machzorim have Ashkenaz and Svard. That means if you daven Svard and you daven in Ashkenaz shul the other way around, for more or less you could follow this, pages and pages and these both in the Machzah. Kapanim Nusach Ashkenaz, also Troim Deshen b'Payis Rishon. Then it says further, Oid Yafisu, another Pius, another Goyrel, who does the Dishon Pnimi. That means the first Goyrel was Trumas HaDeshen. The next Goyrel was who takes off the ash from the Mizbeach HaPnimi and cleans the menorah. Ekev K'tayris Payis Chadashim, a third raffle, who does the K'tayris, and then the fourth one, Aroich Nesachim Payis Haravi. Says the Baal Hamor, it's a mistake. What are you bringing raffles? There was no raffles. The Kohen Gadol did everything from A to Z. The Kohen Gadol did everything. So what's B'chlal? It's a mistake. We said that Rabbeinu Shimshon also learns like the Baal Hamor that the Kohen Gadol had to do every single avodah throughout Yom Kippur. Rashi Daf Tezvav Amud Aleph, Divrei Maschil Kartzoi, speaking about preparing the Tamid. We'll get to Be'ez Hashem. Speaking about the preparation for the carbon Tamid in the morning, Zakt Rashi. About a third down, a little more than a third down, Rashi says, Kartzai Chatchai. So Rashi says that when the Kohen Gadol shechted the Tamid, he only did the first part. Then says Rashi, V'loi Kulon. He didn't do it completely. Why? L'fishet Tzarech Hu Atzmoi. The Kohen Gadol himself had to quickly, from Shechita, go L'maher V'lito Mizrak L'kabel Adam. So maybe he couldn't do the whole shechita because he needed to, right when he started shechting and the dam was coming out, he needed to go quickly with the kli to get the dam to do Kabbalah. Why? You could have a few people. So Rashi Shekol Avodas Yom Kippurim Eina Ksheira Elaboy. The Gemara that we started off with, that the Avodas Yom Kippurim had to be dafka with the Kohen Gadol. Where's Rashi talking about? Rashi's talking about the carbon Tamid. The carbon Tamid had nothing to do with Yom Kippur. it was brought every single day of the year. And still says Rashi that it was ma'akiv dafka the Kohen Gadol. The same is also the Gemara later, Daf Chaf. Daf Chaf Amud Aleph, the Mishnah says that even though the Trumas Hadeshen was done later on, closer to the morning, Yom Kippur was an exception. Says the Mishnah, Yom Kippur was done b'chatzos. Around midnight, that's when they took Haramas Hadeshen off the Mizbeach. Usually it was done later on, basically before the morning, but Yom Kippur was done around chatzos. So the Gemara, why is Yom Kippur different? So the Gemara says, a lashon, b'shem chulsha the Kohen Gadol, b'shem chulsha the Kohen Gadol, which pashtus means he had a very busy day in the whole morning, so to spread it out a little bit, instead of it being right at the beginning of the morning, you had so much to get to, so we moved it earlier to do it midnight. Rashi explains like that, the Ikke Chulsha, Zot Rashi, Daf Chaf Amud Bais Sharei Olav Levadei Humutal. He has to do it. So Rashi says clearly, he has to do the Trumas Hadeshen. Trumas Hadeshen has nothing to do with Yom Kippur. Trumas Hadeshen was avoided every single day of the year. And Zot Rashi, Pshat in the Gemara, that you know why it's Chulsha the Kohen Gadol? Because he had to do it. So Mela, we moved it earlier. Tosfos says the same also. Tosfos writing off an art. Mashma, Tosfos points this out. The Afila Trumas Hadeshen, Shehi Avodas Alayla, we'll get to this in a minute also about what he points out with Alayla. Eina Ksheira Elabai. Means the Kohen Gadol had to do it. And if you take a look in the Taisus Yeshanim over here also, Taisus Yeshanim says the same. Mekan Mashma, right here on the page, Mishum Chulsha the Kohen Gadol, Mekan Mashma Shahaya Kohen Gadol, Oisa Trumas Hadeshen. Because if not, what's the Chulsha the Kohen Gadol? If the Kohen Gadol only had to do Avodas Yom HaKippurim that are connected to Yom Kippur, so a different Kohen can do it. Agav, we asked, the Baal Amor says that it's a mistake in the piyut. It's a mistake. Why? Because what are you bringing? Goyrolos, there was no raffles, the Kohen Gadol did everything. The Taisus Yeshanim right here answers that kasha. What the Baal Amor says that it's a mistake because there was no Goyrolos. Like the Taisus Yeshanim, you're right. There is taka no goyrolas. Why does the piyut bring goyrolas? Why is he bringing goyrolas? You want to know why? Because the Mishnah brings goyrolas. We're going to learn it. The Mishnayos in Yoma brings goyrolas. Why does the Mishnah bring it? Because if we're speaking about the regular avodah also, and every other day there was a goyrol, so we bring it. But not to say that there was a goyrol on Yom Kippur. Maybe a little bit being matchik, maybe, but Al Kapana being meyashiv this kasha, the Baal Amor says it's a mistake. He says, just like in the Mishnah himself, the Mishnah himself brings the goyrolas, even though there was no goyrol on Yom Kippur. So the Paitin on Yom Kippur, by the avoid, also brings goyrolas. So far we have Shita number 1, the Baal Hamor, Rashi, Tosfos Yeshanim, that all hold that the Kohen Gadol had enormous amount of work on Yom Kippur to do. Even if he didn't have to do the avodah of the regular day, he had a lot to do. But he also had to do every single avodah that was done throughout the night and day. Even Trumas Hadeshen, that was by night, everything. If you think that we're not done yet, the Minchas Chinuch is mesupik. What happens about the hector Eivarim from the day before, the Eivarim from Erev Yom Kippur? The halacha is clearly that Eivarim from the day before that you bring the following night, even if it's Leil Shabbos, we spoke about this like early Shabbos, and even if it's Leil Yom Kippur, you could have done it in the afternoon. you still bring it's Doiche Yom Kippur, it's Doiche Shabbos. So the carbon of Erev Yom Kippur, that you're going to be makter the Ivarim, if you didn't do it on Erev Yom Kippur, when do you bring it? Yom Kippur by night, clearly. So the Minchas Chinuch Mesupek, is that also on the Avoid? Is this also that the Kohen Gadol has to do? What's the Safek? It's being done on the day of Yom Kippur, but it's not Avoidus Yom Kippurim. Meaning to say is, the Tamid of the morning, it's supposed to be brought on Yom Kippur. It's not connected to Yom Kippur, but it's supposed to be brought on Yom Kippur. This, you could have done Erev Yom Kippur. So Minchas Chinuch is Mesupek. What would have been what's the din if the Kohen Gadol also has to do this as well also? Atkan, the first Shita. So if we stop right here, it's very clear. When you learn Rashi, Daf Bais Amud Aleph, first Rashi in the Masechta, Rashi says, Shekol avodas Yom Kippurim eina ksheira ela boy. The Gemara is all over. Means every single avodah throughout Yom Kippur has to be by the Kohen Gadol, and if not, it's possible. It's ma'akev. Who argues? If there's a Baal Amor, then there's a Malchamas. The Ramban argues. The Ramban argues, a very long Ramban, and to take out some pointers, the Ramban says, first of all, you can't just say that the Payata made a mistake. It's just interesting to note, in these times already, in the Zman HaGemara, the Torah, the Maseches speaks about it, there was many different nuschayos. Be'ikra came about after the Churban Bais, when there was no longer the Avodas Yom Kippurim. The Avodas Yom Kippurim was much blatter and blatter. Many different Amoraim, many different at the time, said the Avodas Yom Kippurim. Zokter Ramban, were you going to say that they made a mistake by bringing the Payasis, the Garolis? And Zokter Ramban like this, says the Ramban, by day, Taka Evi Avodas Yom Kippurim by day, including the Karban Tamid, was all with the Kohen Gadol. However, the Avodah of by night, that was not any, let's say, Trumas Hadeshin, didn't have to be with the Kohen Gadol. Didn't have to be with the Kohen Gadol. So the first thing you answer is that's why we bring the raffles, even though the Gairolis, it could be not all the Gairolis were relevant, but once you bring the Gairolis, already you bring all the Gairolis. But Akaparim, there were Gairolis even on Yom Kippur. Even on Yom Kippur, there was a raffle which Kohen did the Avodah of Trumas Hadeshin on Yom Kippur. Avad, there was a raffle, there was a Gairol. The Kohen Gadol, if you want, was able to do it, but he didn't have to do it. So B'meila, what the Baal Amor said that it's a mistake, Dr. Ramban, no, it's not a mistake. There was Taka Gairolis. There was also more Gairolis. The Ramban says another pointer. I don't know for sure if the Baal Amor argues on this, but the Ramban says clearly, if it wasn't Avodah, it was a Machshiri Avodah. For an example, taking off the ash from the Mizbeach HaPnimi, or cleaning the menorah, that wasn't avodah. That's machshiri avodah. And if you, like I mentioned earlier, clearly one of the piyosis, one of the raffles were who takes off the desha from the mizbeach hapnimi and the menorah. So there was also a raffle for that. Any machshiri avodah, even by day, the Kohen Gadol was able to use a helper. However, any avodah by day, even if it wasn't a Yom Kippur avodah, dafka with the Kohen Gadol. You're going to ask me, wait a second, what happened with the Gemara Mashem Chulsha the Kohen Gadol? Mashem Chulsha the Kohen Gadol, the Gemara Daf Chaf, the Gemara says that what? That the ash, the Trumas Hadeshin was done earlier Yom Kippur by night. Why? Because of Chulsha the Kohen Gadol. What do you mean Chulsha the Kohen Gadol? The Kohen Gadol didn't have to do it. Taisvis himself over there, Daf Chaf Amud Beis, going to Chaf Aleph Amud Aleph, Taisvis says a different gersa. Mashem Chulsha the Kohen. He brings a different gersa. And maybe Chulsha the Kohen Tak Enachami, not Kohen Gadol. It doesn't have to be the Kohen Gadol. So we have the Shitas Abal Amar that every single avodah has to be b'Kohen Gadol. Shitas Haramban that only the avodah by day, every single avodah by day, but only by day has to be with the Kohen Gadol. Who else holds like the Ramban? The Rambam. The Rambam, in the beginning of Hilchas Avodas Yom Kippurim, the Rambam spells out, which would sound, if you learn just that Rambam, Perik Aleph Halacha Bais, it would sound from the Rambam that he holds like the Baal Amor. The Rambam says Avodas Kol Chamisha Asa Behemois. Then the Rambam says, Ele Kohen Gadol, V'chein Shar Ha'avodah Shel Yom Zeh, Kegoyin HaKtoires. And then he also brings Vatavas Aneris, which we said the Ramban said, but he says everything is with the Kohen Gadol, everything, which would sound like the Baal Amor, clearly. However, if you go to Perek Daled, the Rambam in Hilchas Yom Kippurim and Perek Daled says the Rambam, Seder Kol HaMaisim Shebayom Hazeh, let me map out what happens throughout the whole Yom Kippur. B'chatzois halayla. What does the Rambam say? Mefaisin l'trumas hadeshen. The Rambam says that you make a goyrol by night. Who does the trumas hadeshen? So who is that like? Like the Ramban, that you make a goyrol. So the Rambam, even though he holds by day, everything has to be with the Kohen Gadol. By night, avoided that's not connected to the Kohen, to Yom Kippur, could be done by any Kohen. Agav, besides the time, also I don't want to make it too complicated, even for myself, between the Rambam and the Ramban, there's a chiluk, what the Goyrolis were, because if you remember I said the Ramban says that something that wasn't avoida, like you mentioned, machshire avoida, that also the Kohen Gadol was able to use help. The Rambam pretty clearly says that even something that's not avoida by day, the Kohen Gadol was not able to use help. Well, that's on the side. 10 l'chachem, you can look, you can be ba'ayim more. The Ritva brings a raya to the Ramban. Again, the Ramban says that only the avodas by day. Meaning to say is, if somebody in the middle of your sleep, somebody asks you, Trumas Hadeshen by Yom Kippur, on Yom Kippur, does the Kohen Gadol have to do it, yes or no? It's a machloikis rishonim. The Baal Amor says yes, dafka the Kohen Gadol, and the Ramban says no, any Kohen can do it. So the Zokter Torah right to the Ramban that any Kohen can do it. As we're learning, there was Yud Kedushas, that the Kohen Gadol went to the mikvah, he was Makadosh Yadav Raglov. If the Kohen Gadol also did the Trubas Hadeshen, then we're missing a Kedusha. He had to prepare himself before the Trubas Hadeshen as well also. Al Korchach, it's not Al Korchach, the Kohen Gadol didn't have to do it. Lastly, there's a third Shita. Shitas HaRitva. The Ritva b'Shem Rabbi. The Ritva brings some Rabbi HaGadol. Sagt the Ritva, Min HaTorah, any avodah throughout Yom Kippur that's not a avodas Yom Kippurim, any Kohen can do. Which means the Kohen Gadol could really use help. However, L'tchatchila, even midairaisa, a Kohen Gadol should do everything. What does it mean, l'tchatchila? It means if the Kohen Gadol is really shvach, he's fasting, he could use a helper to do the other avodas. L'tchatchila, he should do everything. What's the raya? Says the Chazon Ish. Because what we mentioned before, the 10 kedushas that the Kohen Gadol goes to the mikvah, he washes his hands back and forth throughout Yom Kippur, that includes the regular avodas as well. Says the Chazon Ish, how do you have 10? If a regular Kohen could do it, then the Kohen Gadol is not going to have Yod Kedushas. The teretz is, that's the l'tchatchila. 100% if a Kohen Hedya does the Avodas Yoma Kippurim not connected to Yom Kippur, a regular Kohen brings the Atamid, the halacha is going to be that it's kosher. And then a Chanami Taka, the Kohen Gadol won't have Yud Kedushas. But it's not Ma'akiv. However, Midrabanan it is Ma'akiv. So, Lamais is like this. The emes is these are a Tosfos. It's already, the time doesn't allow. You'll be ma'ayin daf lamed beis, amad beis here. Tosfos says, Avol Tamid l'shayich l'chayvus Yom Kippurim, not Aaron HaKoyin. V'yashloim, as like Tosfos, the makam malkum pasal Midrabanan. So just to conclude, let's first make a sikum very clearly. Could a Kohen Gadol use help, have help from a Kohen Hedyot? Loita Bal Amor, no, for nothing. Loita Ramban, avoida by night, and machshire avoida throughout the day when it's not Yom Kippur related, he could use help. And then we have the Shita Saratva that at Akapanim Midrabanan or not. We could have said, and with this I conclude, we could have said, remember I said that in the Piyut, there's a Piyut that Nusach Ashkenaz says that brings the Payasis, and Nusach Svard doesn't bring the Payasis. We could have said that these two Nuschayis depend on the Machlokes Rishonim if there was a Goyrol or not. Right? The Baal Amor says there was no Goyrol, the Ramban says there is a Goyrol. So technically you could have said that these two Neschayis depend on the Machlokes Rishonim. But Lamaisa doesn't have to be like that. Why? Because even the Baal Amor that says that there is no Goyrolis, we saw the Taisus Yeshanim answers that Lamaisa, the Goyrolis is brought Agav every other day. And even the Nusach Svar that doesn't bring Goyrolis could still hold like the Ramban that there was Goyrolis. Why does it bring Goyrolis? Because if you look through the Avodah, it doesn't go through every single Avodah of the daily Avodah. It goes through the Yom Kippur Avodah. Could be Lo'ilam, there was Payasais. Even Nusach Svar that doesn't bring any Goyrolis, there was Goyrolis. But we're only speaking about the Avodas Yom Kippurim. We should talk about Zoicha, the Binyan Bais HaMikdash, to be able to witness the Avodas Yom Kippurim. Have a wonderful Shabbos.